This is a story about a man who didn't leave out of anger, but out of clarity, when he finally realized he no longer needed to play a role in his own life. We'd been married for 6 years when everything unraveled. In the beginning, Rose and I were different, or maybe I just wanted to believe we were. We met at a summer art festival in Waterfront Park, both reaching for the same overpriced lemonade. She had this energy that pulled people in, made them feel like they were the only person in the room. Back then, I thought that charm was reserved for me. We'd spend weekends exploring Powell's bookstore, cooking elaborate meals together in our small apartment, staying up late talking about dreams and futures that felt inevitable. But somewhere around year 4, after we bought the house in Laurelhurst, and she got promoted to senior account manager at Henderson Marketing, something shifted. The attention she used to give me started scattering outward, seeking validation from crowds instead of connection with one person. Our quiet weekends became exhausting social marathons. The woman who once read poetry to me in bed now performed for audiences of near strangers, and I became the prop in her carefully curated life rather than her partner. It all started at a party my friend Gabriel hosted in the heart of Portland's trendy Pearl District. The penthouse apartment was transformed into a sea of bodies, pulsing music, and scattered conversations that blended into white noise. The place was packed, loud, and chaotic in that particular way where you can't hear yourself think, yet everyone pretends they're having the time of their lives. Rose loved the attention. She drifted around the room like a performer on opening night, her laughter too loud, her movements too deliberate, performing more than socializing. I watched from my spot at the marble bar counter as she gravitated toward William Mercer, the tall guy from her office who laughed at anything, even jokes that weren't funny. He had that easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that revealed too many teeth. She leaned in too close, her hand lingering on his shoulder longer than necessary, brushed his arm with calculated casualness, even fed him a French fry from her plate while his friends, Mark and Trevor, I think their names were, glanced at me from across the room, waiting for a reaction, their eyes darting between us like spectators at a tennis match. The bartender, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair, asked if I wanted another drink. I shook my head, unable to look away from the scene unfolding before me. Gabriel navigated through the crowd and leaned against the bar beside me, following my gaze. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there in solidarity, but after a few minutes he asked if I was okay. His voice carried genuine concern, the kind you only hear from real friends who've known you long enough to read between the lines. I said yes, but my eyes stayed on Rose. The music seemed to fade into the background as I watched her whisper something into William's ear, her lips almost touching his skin. She met my gaze across the room. I know she saw me watching, and then she whispered something else to William, her eyes locked on mine, almost daring me to explode, to make a scene, to give her the dramatic confrontation she seemed to be orchestrating. Instead, I set down my glass with deliberate calm, walked through the crowd of Portland's young professionals and artists, and approached her with measured steps. The conversations around us seemed to pause as people sensed something was about to happen. I calmly asked her to leave with me. My voice was steady, quiet enough that only she and William could hear. She brushed me off with a dismissive wave of her hand, her voice dripping with condescension as she called it, just a party, and told me to lighten up and stop being so jealous. William looked uncomfortable now, suddenly very interested in his phone. But I had already made my decision. I thanked Gabriel for hosting, grabbed my jacket from the coat rack by the door, and walked out into the cool Portland night. The air hit my face like a wake-up call. She yelled after me that I was overreacting, that I was being dramatic, that I was embarrassing her in front of her friends. Her voice echoed down the hallway as I waited for the elevator. I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. Something had shifted inside me, not anger, but something cleaner, sharper. Clarity. At our house in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, with its craftsman-style architecture, and the Japanese maple tree in the front yard that Rose had always loved, she arrived minutes later. I heard her car pull into the driveway with aggressive speed, the door slam with unnecessary force. She burst through the front door with a half-hearted apology, her words tumbling out in a rehearsed jumble. She admitted she'd been acting out for attention, that she was testing me, that she wanted to see if I still cared, that William didn't mean anything. The excuses piled up like kindling waiting for a match. I stood in the kitchen, my back against the counter, and told her to save it for the morning. My voice carried a finality that made her stop mid-sentence. She looked at me like I was a stranger, confusion flickering across her face. "Otto," she said, my name turning into a question. I walked past her, up the stairs to my bedroom, and closed the door behind me. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke before dawn and made coffee in the silence of the empty kitchen. When Rose finally emerged around 9, her eyes puffy from crying or drinking or both, I was ready. I laid out boundaries at the kitchen table, my notebook open between us with everything I'd written down in the quiet hours of the morning. Space from going out together to parties or social events where alcohol was involved, separate personal spending accounts so I could see exactly where my money was going, a quick text if she stayed out late, so I wasn't left wondering if she was safe or just didn't care enough to tell me, and no more jokes about me to her friends, no more using our relationship as material for her comedy routines with her book club or co-workers. She acted stunned, her mouth hanging open like I'd just announced I was moving to Antarctica. Are you serious right now? She asked, her voice rising. This is insane, Otto. You're trying to control me. But I could see something else in her eyes. Fear, maybe, that I was finally done playing the role of the understanding husband who overlooked everything. She reluctantly agreed after an hour of back and forth, of her arguing, and me calmly repeating that these weren't negotiable demands but simple requirements for me to stay. She signed nothing, made no promises, just gave a tight nod and retreated upstairs. For a while, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month, she tried to look like she was fixing things. She'd bring me lunch at my office at Morrison & Associates, the architecture firm where I worked designing sustainable buildings. She'd show up with Thai food from our favorite place on Hawthorne or sandwiches from that deli we used to visit when we first started dating. She cooked dinner several nights in a row, elaborate meals that seemed designed more for Instagram photos than actual eating, pretending to be attentive while scrolling through her phone between courses. But every attempt felt rehearsed, like she was following a script titled, How to Save Your Marriage in 30 Days. There was no genuine warmth, no real connection, just the mechanical motions of someone checking boxes on a list. And every time we were around friends, at Gabriel's game nights, at Lily's birthday barbecue, at the monthly dinner club she'd insisted we join, she couldn't resist a sarcastic jab about my new rules or Otto's little control issues. She'd laugh like it was all a joke, like our marriage was a sitcom, and I was the uptight husband who needed to be mocked for entertainment. Our friends would laugh awkwardly, unsure how to respond, while I sat there feeling the distance between us grow wider with each comment. I stopped playing along. One evening at dinner with another couple, when she made another comment about my ridiculous boundaries, I set down my fork and said clearly, It's not rules. It's clarity. The table went silent. Her face flushed red, but I didn't elaborate, didn't argue. I simply returned to my meal while the conversation slowly, painfully restarted around us. She didn't like the distance forming between us like a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. She said I was getting colder, more distant, that I wasn't the man she married. I told her I was simply getting clearer about what I would and wouldn't accept, clearer about who I was without her constant need for validation, clearer about what a real partnership should look like. When I canceled our usual Sunday plans with the group, brunch at that overpriced place on Alberta Street that Rose loved because she could post photos of their elaborate avocado toast, she accused me of tearing everything apart, of isolating her, of trying to punish her. I told her I was building something I could actually live with, a life that didn't require me to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't, and she could be part of it, but not like this. Not with the lies, the games, the constant testing. One Friday night in late October, when the Portland rain was turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon, she went out with her friend Jessica, or at least that's what she told me. She promised to update me, swore she'd text by 10, gave me that smile that used to melt my defenses but now just looked like another performance. She didn't. At 11:10, I sat in our living room with all the lights off, the house dark and empty except for the sound of rain against the windows. The silence felt heavy, oppressive, like it was waiting for something to break. When I texted asking where she was, keeping my message simple and non-accusatory, "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay?" She replied almost instantly, "Don't call me." No explanation, no apology, no I'm fine, I'll be home soon. Just those 3 words that somehow contained all the contempt, all the dismissal, all the evidence I needed. Instead of anger, instead of the rage that should have consumed me, the jealousy that a younger version of myself would have felt, everything clicked into place like puzzle pieces finally finding their proper positions. The months of disrespect, the boundary violations, the constant testing, the public humiliation, It all crystallized into perfect, undeniable clarity. I didn't call. I didn't argue. I wrote back with steady fingers, "Don't come home." 10 minutes later, my phone exploded with activity. The calls started flooding in, 20 of them in succession, buzzing nonstop like angry hornets trapped in my palm. Each call I declined sent her further into panic, her desperation growing with each rejected attempt. But the moment she sent that message, she'd already burned the bridge. There was no crossing back, no undoing what had been done. The moment she cut off communication so coldly, so dismissively, I took it as final. The house felt strangely calm despite, or perhaps because of, the storm of phone calls. I didn't pace or rehearse speeches or imagine confrontations. I just acted with the kind of clarity that comes from finally accepting reality. I moved through our house like I was checking items off a list, each action deliberate and purposeful. I pulled out her suitcases from the hall closet, the matching set we'd bought for our honeymoon to Hawaii that now seemed like it belonged to a different lifetime, and filled them methodically with her clothes from the walk-in closet we'd renovated last year. Her designer shoes that she'd spent too much money on. Her makeup collection that took up half the bathroom counter. Her books from the shelves we'd built together. Her yoga mats and exercise equipment. Her collection of decorative pillows that I'd never understood the purpose of. Everything that was hers. Everything that carried her scent or her touch or her presence. By the time she slipped into the bedroom hours later to gather her toiletries, I heard her key in the lock around midnight, heard her cautious footsteps on the stairs. Everything was already waiting by the front door. 4 suitcases, 3 boxes, 2 bags. Her entire presence in my life reduced to luggage. At 12:05, I messaged Noah Richards, the locksmith I'd hired 3 times before for various projects at work and at the house. Need both cylinders changed on front and back doors. Paying double for immediate service. He responded within 2 minutes. On my way. And arrived within 20 minutes, his van pulling up quietly in the driveway. He replaced the locks without a single word of judgment or curiosity, just professional efficiency. I handed him cash with a generous tip, and he disappeared into the night like he'd never been there. At 12:58, headlights flashed across the living room where I sat in the dark, watching, waiting. A soft rattle at the door, her key trying to find purchase in a lock it no longer fit, turned frantic, desperate. "Otto," she called through the door, her voice carrying that edge of panic that comes from sudden powerlessness. "My key isn't working. Otto, I know you're in there." I waited, letting her knock for a full minute, listening to her voice rise from confusion to anger to fear. I waited until the knocking grew urgent, aggressive, before I finally walked to the door and opened it with the chain still on. Through the 4-inch gap, she stood there on the porch, illuminated by the yellow glow of the porch light. Her mascara was smeared down her cheeks in dark rivers. Her hair was tangled like she'd been running her hands through it. She smelled of cigarettes and wine and someone else's cologne. When I finally removed the chain and opened the door fully, her eyes immediately locked onto the luggage arranged neatly behind me, impossible to miss. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice breaking on the last word. "Just finishing what you started," I said, my voice level, empty of emotion. "Over a fight?" Her eyes were wide, disbelieving. "No, over your text." She tried stepping closer, reaching for me with trembling hands, but I nudged a suitcase toward her with my foot, creating a physical barrier between us. "Don't." The single word hung in the air like a command. Tears filled her eyes, spilling over, and for a moment I almost felt something, sympathy, regret, the ghost of love, but it passed like smoke. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice desperate now, pleading. "Otto, please. We can fix this. I'll change. I promise I'll change." "Maybe I am making a mistake," I acknowledged, "but I'm not repeating it." She picked up her bags with trembling hands, struggling with the weight, looking back at me one final time as if I might suddenly change my mind. I didn't move. I didn't help. I just watched as she loaded everything into her car in 3 trips, her heels clicking on the driveway, her breath visible in the cold October air. The engine started with a rough cough. The wheels rolled away slowly, like she was giving me one last chance to run after her. For the first time in months, the silence that followed felt honest, clean, like the air after a storm has finally passed. The next morning, Saturday, I woke at 7 and went straight to my lawyer's office. David Chun at Portland Family Law had been recommended by Gabriel, and he'd prepared the divorce papers in advance based on our previous conversations. I signed everything without hesitation, my signature steady and certain on each page. By 10 a.m., It was done, filed with the Multnomah County Circuit Court, officially ending what had taken years to build and only moments to destroy. I blocked her number on my phone, watching her name disappear from my contacts like erasing a mistake. I sent her one email from a new address I'd created just for this purpose. Your remaining things are ready for pickup. Available times: today 2 to 4 p.m. or Sunday 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Please arrange for someone to collect them. Do not contact me directly. Around noon, Gabriel and Lily stopped by unannounced, carrying coffee and concern. They'd heard Portland's social circles were small enough that news traveled fast. I explained the situation calmly, without drama or embellishment, just the facts laid out like evidence in a trial. Lily looked shocked, her hand covering her mouth. Gabriel simply nodded with the understanding of someone who'd seen it coming long before I had. If you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, help with anything, we're here, Lily said, squeezing my hand. I'm good, I said, and I meant it. The words felt true in a way that nothing had felt true for months. On Sunday morning, right at 10 o'clock, a navy blue pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Edward Lang, Rose's father, emerged from the driver's side, a man in his 60s with silver hair and tired eyes. He wasn't angry, just resigned, wearing the expression of someone who'd seen this story play out before and knew how it ended. Rose stayed in the passenger seat, her face turned away, hidden behind oversized sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. We loaded the boxes in silence, working with the efficiency of strangers helping someone move. The only sounds were the scrape of cardboard against the truck bed, the slam of the tailgate, the rustling of the Japanese maple leaves in the morning breeze. You sure about this? Edward asked when we finished, wiping his hands on his jeans. His voice carried no judgment, just genuine curiosity. I'm good, I repeated, using the same words I'd told Gabriel and Lily. She's having a rough time, he added, glancing back at the truck where his daughter sat motionless. Lost her job at Henderson Marketing last week. Blew up at her boss in front of the whole team. She's been staying at my place, crying most nights. That's her deal now, I replied, and I meant it without cruelty, just simple fact. He shook my hand, a firm grip that lingered a moment longer than necessary, wished me luck, and climbed back into the truck. As they pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Rose's face through the window, a portrait of regret arriving too late to matter, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked small, diminished, nothing like the confident woman who'd fed William Mercer a French fry just weeks ago. Life shifted into something simple, almost meditative in its routine. Work in the mornings at Morrison & Associates, where I threw myself into a new project designing an eco-friendly community center for Southeast Portland. Gym after lunch at the Pearl Fitness Center, where I pushed my body until my mind went quiet. Projects in the garage at night. I'd started building furniture, finding unexpected peace in the smell of sawdust and the precision of measurements. Gabriel dropped by on Wednesdays to grill salmon on my back patio and talk about everything except Rose. We discussed work, sports, his relationship with Lily, plans to go hiking at Mount Hood, anything that belonged to the present instead of dwelling in the past. Rose's name barely came up, and when it did, we let it pass like an uncomfortable guest no one wanted to engage. She tried to reach me despite my clear boundaries. Emails full of regret appeared in a folder I'd created specifically to quarantine her attempts at contact. No anger in her messages anymore, just desperation dripping from every word. I understand now. I was so stupid. Please give me another chance. I'll do anything. I didn't answer. I didn't even read most of them in full, just scanned enough to confirm there was nothing requiring a legal response. Word spread through our former social circles that she'd quit her job after a blow-up with her supervisor, some argument about her performance and attitude that had escalated until security was called. She'd moved into a small rental in the Jade District, a studio apartment that cost half what she was used to. Jessica reported that Rose cried at work during her last 2 weeks. She told people I'd thrown her out for no reason, painting herself as the victim of a cruel and unreasonable husband. But whenever someone brought up the text, "Don't call me," the story crumbled like wet paper. Even her most loyal friends couldn't justify that level of dismissiveness, that casual cruelty delivered via 3 words on a screen. A month later, in late November when Portland's rain had settled into its winter rhythm, I started casually dating again. Not out of revenge or loneliness, but from genuine readiness. I met a nurse named Sarah at a coffee shop in Hawthorne. She had a warm laugh that felt effortless and genuine, completely different from Rose's performed joy. We went to dinner, then to a movie, then on a hike to Silver Falls State Park where we talked for hours about everything and nothing. I wasn't trying to recreate anything or fill a rose-shaped hole in my life. I was just choosing something that felt right, something built on honesty instead of games, someone who said what she meant and meant what she said. When the finalized divorce papers arrived in mid-December, delivered via certified mail that required my signature, I read them at the kitchen table with my morning coffee. The legal language was cold, impersonal, reducing years of marriage to a series of clauses about asset division and debt allocation. I set them beside my coffee mug and felt nothing but quiet acceptance. No grief, no anger, no relief, just the neutral acknowledgement of an ending that had been inevitable long before I'd recognized it. We split the savings 50-50 as required by Oregon law, $47,000 each, accumulated over 6 years of marriage. I kept the house in Laurelhurst with its Japanese maple and craftsman charm, taking on the remaining mortgage. I kept the truck, a reliable Toyota that had never let me down. She got her car, her retirement account, and freedom to build whatever life she wanted without me in it. One evening in late December, I sat on my front porch wrapped in a fleece jacket, watching the neighborhood lights flicker on as dusk settled over Portland. I checked my phone out of habit, no messages, no missed calls, no emails requiring my attention. The silence that once felt heavy, oppressive, like something broken that needed fixing, now felt perfect. It felt like peace. Later that evening, scrolling through social media while half watching a Trailblazers game, I saw Rose at a bar downtown with new people I didn't recognize, wearing the same practice smile I'd watched her deploy at Gabriel's party all those weeks ago. She was leaning close to some guy with styled hair, laughing too loud, her hand on his arm. The image should have stung, should have triggered something, jealousy, anger, regret, but it didn't. It just felt like watching an old movie you've outgrown, recognizing the plot, but no longer caring how it ends. People say men leave in anger, driven by rage and wounded pride. But that wasn't me. I didn't leave in anger. I left when I realized I no longer needed to audition for a part in my own life, when I understood that love without respect is just performance art that exhausts everyone involved. She told me not to call, delivering that message with casual cruelty at 11:10 on a Friday night. So I didn't call. And when I told her not to come home, I meant it with every fiber of my being. Those weren't threats or manipulation. They were simple statements of fact, boundaries drawn in permanent ink. Now my mornings are quiet, peaceful, honest. I wake without dread, without wondering what game we'll play today, or what test I'll fail. I make coffee in silence, watching the sunrise paint the Portland sky in shades of orange and pink. And every sunrise reminds me that the cleanest break doesn't come from rage or revenge or dramatic gestures, but from clarity, from finally seeing the truth and having the courage to act on it. The house is mine. The life is mine. The future is mine. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.